You're listening to a podcast from the BBC World Service. This is Hard Talk with me, Zainab Badawi. Thanks for downloading this edition of the programme, and I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to Hard Talk with me, Zainab Badawi, in the Swiss resort of Davos, where my guest has been celebrated at this year's World Economic Forum. He's been given an award for his philanthropic work on women's rights. Shah Rukh Khan is one of the biggest movie stars in the world, with a fan base in the billions. He believes his fame brings with it responsibilities. So, as a Muslim star in Bollywood, what can he tell us about the status of women and intercommunal relations in India today? Shah Rukh Khan, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you very much for having me over at HARDtalk.
Very glad to have you. Look, after graduating from the University of Delhi, you dropped out of a master's degree in communications to become an actor. I take it you have no regrets?
It was either being a journalist or being an actor. I was actually training to be a filmmaker there. They didn't have a filmmaking course there. I'm really an actor by accident, because I went down and I said, okay, I'll start working in front of the camera because some people offered me a film. But behind the scenes, I learned how to make ad films. I wanted to make advertising films. And when my wife, now wife, and my friends asked me that, how long are you gone for? I said, a year. And that's it. And it's been 30 years now. I'm still in front of the camera.
The accidental actor.
I'm the accidental actor.
Right, all right. Well, your debut movie was the romantic drama Deewana in the early 1990s, and then thereafter you very quickly established yourself as a very successful actor. You've made around 80 Bollywood movies, I think, something like that.
Yeah, full length about 65, 70, yeah.
Yeah, all right. And which is your most favourite one?
The next one.
The next movie coming up.
Yeah, that's the favorite one. Every time is the next one.
Really?
When the one is finished, then it's over and done with. But I've done some really wonderful films with some really nice people I never expected to work with. Mr. Yash Chopra made a film called Dare with Me, where I was a bad guy. It's like kind of like Cape Fear. When I started off working, I remember this wonderful director called me and I said, the reason you're interesting to work with is because you're very unattractive. And we can put you in any role and nobody will know. So I started off like that. So I did a lot of bad guy roles and I really enjoyed them.
But you've really made your name as a romantic lead, I think.
don't know how. I'm shy of women, and then every time they keep giving me these roles and make me sing and dance, I'm really awkward at romance. But I guess acting is like that. What you're really bad at is what you finally act out better. You know, it's that kind of lying.
But your upcoming film this year is going to be Zero, which is about a man who is of restricted height and falls in love with a very flamboyant woman. Quite a departure for you. But you said in 2015 that we have to change the format of our films. I always say this: if I'm invited to your party, I need to dress up in the code that you tell me to. Do you think that Bollywood films need to change in order to appeal to an audience beyond their current one?
They have to. I stick by this. Even until about 4 days ago, I was having a big discussion with some friends. And maybe I'm completely wrong, but this is my belief, that unless we change our screenplay technique, unless we make our films shorter, and perhaps, yeah, you can have the musical part of it, but they have to be musical-specific films. Not every film can't have a song and dance, unless you change these two things. And my
because they're about 2.5 hours long on average.
They're longer. They have an interval. They are 3 acts films. It should be in 2 acts without an interval.
But your opinion changes, doesn't it, a bit, Shah Rukh Khan? Because in 2006, after spending a few months in LA, London, and New York, you said, I found that our cinema is a little exaggerated, which is you've said now, but you said to make a mark in the West, we have to reach their level without losing our identity, culture, or songs. I don't want to star in a Hollywood film, but want to make a film that crosses over universally. It sounds like you're trying to have the best of both worlds. Can you really do that, maintain your culture and identity?
This is personally me, because I don't think I'd be able to participate in a crossover film where we need to change if we need to. Like, you know, I meet my friends and they say, look, we need to take the film international. You need to take a film international, you have to make it for 90 minutes. Without songs, we'll have to be more character-driven, we'll have to be extremely screenplayed. Like, you know, I've sat in London cinema theatres with friends and English people who are like, oh, we have an interval. There's 2 halves to a film, which itself is, you know, if you're looking for an international audience, personally, when people ask me what do I enjoy doing most, I like doing what I'm doing, singing and dancing.
Really? But you really you say, I don't want to star in a Hollywood film? Really?
I wasn't offered too many, so that was the best way to say it. I don't want to star in a Hollywood film. Yeah.
But look, you're reputedly the second best paid actor in the whole world, of whatever nationality. All right, well,
this was sometime
you're
back.
way up there, anyway. You're not complaining, are you, Shah
No, I need
Khan?
to tell you a story, and then we'll go on with this.
Okay.
I was driving down to my office. I was making a film, and which was called Happy New Year. Very expensive film, and we had to create this whole visual effects of this World Dance Championship in Dubai. So I was driving down, and my producer called me, and he said, "We have no money." And I said, "Yeah, so what do I do? Can I make some visits to some place and do some openings so I can get some money?" And he said, "Yeah, we really need to, because we don't have money, otherwise we'll have to borrow." And I reached my office and I put on my phone, and while I was trying to find out ways to earn money to finish my film, this came out that I'm the second richest actor in the world.
Yeah. Was it news to you?
It was news to me, and I stick by it. Please continue saying
But
it
you're
feels
not
good.
complaining, are
I'm
you?
not complaining at all.
You've made a lot of money.
I made a lot of
from
money.
many films.
Many films. I always wanted to be rich. I always wanted to be famous. I come from a very, very, very poor background. Given a chance, I'll do it all over again. I'm just so happy being a star and so rich.
But you have said that with that fame and wealth comes responsibilities, and you're here at Davos at the World Economic Forum, where you've been celebrated for your work in philanthropy. You received the Crystal Award, and you say you are committed to improving the state of the world, and in particular the rights of women in your native India. But are you using your voice loudly enough, Shah Khan?
No, I don't think so. You know, I have been, as I should be, extremely self-centered for many years, because I needed to do what I do. I'm like a regular guy. I want to make a lot of money. I want to be famous. I want to do my job. I'm sensitive because I'm an actor, or the other way around. There always has been two thoughts about turning around and doing something for the community, for service to others. And I don't think I've done enough. Every time I've been asked upon to do something, lend my voice to a project, I go ahead and do it. But personally, I always felt I should get into something that I really feel for, and I want to do it without talking about it. Being here at Davos is also awkward for me when I'm talking about the foundation that I set up 3 years back. But then I was coached
That's
by
the
my...
Mir Foundation, named after your father.
I think over the years, I came to a conclusion, which was only about 4 or 5 years back, to be honest. And like you said, no, I haven't used my voice enough. Not at all.
But now you've said to disfigure a woman by throwing acid on her face is to me one of the basest, crudest acts of subjugation imaginable. At the source of it lies the view that a woman does not have the right to assert her choice. Why did you choose this cause, acid attack survivors?
A couple of things happened. One, I'm surrounded by beautiful women. Like you said, I'm a romantic hero, and I'm working with the most beautiful women in the world. My life is surrounded by women. And then I came across a couple of them who were victims, who've been oppressed, who have been subjugated like this. And it's very hurtful. I was scared to see them initially, because they've been disfigured. And what I found was that I should go there and, perhaps be charitable. And I realized they don't need that. They need solidarity. I thought, I can be this narcissistically compassionate person and turn around and say, look, I'll look after you. And I realized they don't need that.
But it's just part of a much wider problem. We know that women in India suffer all sorts of discrimination. Only 12% of members of parliament in India are female. Only 5% of women say they have the right to choose whom they want to marry. I can go on and on with those kind of statistics. 80% need permission to go and access healthcare. Why do you think that's the state of affairs for women in India? What are these barriers?
Well, I think there's a state of, except for the way perhaps women can come out now and talk in the West, I think the state of women has been, this categorization of women by men of society and defining it so strongly, I think is what the fight of women against is all over. It is in India also, and it is I'm sure in Japan also, and in England also, and America also. And that is why somebody who's only working with women, I was like, I have to do something, one which I feel for, and try to, again, to say uplift through my work and all I can, just stand with them.
But listen, you work in an industry that, to put it bluntly, Bollywood is sexist. That men get paid more than the women. We've heard about the Me Too campaign, obviously, in Hollywood. I mean, that kind of thing must go on. We know it does, because some actors have actually talked about that. Kangana Ranaut is one of the few Bollywood actresses who's publicly spoken about the sexual assault and harassment. She's appeared in about 30 films, and she told Reuters, "I faced severe sexual exploitation and harassment at the workplace." I mean, have you witnessed this kind of thing? Have you done anything about it?
Personally, at a level when I'm making films or working in films, we are very clear about the attitude to women. Even the smallest aspects of the names coming in the title first, which is not going to do anything, but the kind of respectability.
That's the thing that you started a few years ago, so that your
notional.
female co-star, her name appears before yours.
Because,
but that's just an empty gesture, isn't it?
It is.
Go on, admit it.
It is. Yeah. You don't have to push me too far to agree to this.
Okay.
But it's a way of trying to say that even this small thing needs to be done just to bring about the equality. Just see what we've reduced ourselves to. You know, to put a girl's name in front just to show that, look, guys, we are thinking of them as equals. And that is sad. And that is strangely dichotomous when you're talking about creativity and you have boys and girls working together. I've never personally, firsthand, and nobody, as if I may say, let me be a little macho on your show, nobody dare misbehave with a woman on my set. I'm very clear on that.
And your fellow actors haven't in the past come and said to you, you know what, Shah Rukh, this and that happened to me, or it hasn't come, it's not been on your radar?
I'm very close to the women I've worked with. No, nobody has said this.
Really?
This interview talk about, perhaps that is there.
Kangana.
But I've never personally been told. On my sets, maybe it also stems from the fact I have just been this mother, my sister, my wife, my daughter. I've just been with women. So I've been brought up by women.
You say that, but yet, you know, you have starred, as I said, as the romantic lead in so many Bollywood films. And to put it frankly, you know, the women's characters revolve around yours. There are many scenes where there are scantily clad women without any real link to the plot. You know, they don't have to be dressed like that. I mean, are you comfortable having starred in such films, and yet here you are advocating women's rights?
I'm most comfortable having starred in those films. And none of them, I mean, I was just trying to quickly see if there was a scantily clad woman in my film.
I've spoken to Indian people here at the World Economic Forum.
And that is all right.
And they said, you know, these are the films that Shah Rukh Khan has acted in.
Oh, yes, and they're all right.
You know, everything revolves around him, and the woman gains salvation if she, you know, ends up marrying you and that kind of thing.
No, Zainab, you've asked the wrong people then, no. My films, everything revolves around the woman. I revolve around the woman. In every film. I run after them.
Really?
Please,
okay,
name
really?
one film.
I'll give you. All right, let me hit you with this bit of research from 2012 from the University of Louisville in the US, which found that commercial Hindi films portray ideal women as submissive, self-sacrificing, chaste and controlled, while the bad woman is individualistic, sexually aggressive, westernized and not sacrificing. I mean, you know, it's got a lot of data, that kind of...
But I don't do typical Hindi films.
But that's the industry, though. Still, you might be tarred with the same brush, even if you say, well, I don't do that kind of film.
No, there is 100%. I mean, 100% there is a portrayal of women, which needs to change in every aspect, not only in Indian films. And one tries to, as much as one, through one's work. But yes, it exists. I mean, there's no denying it, that yes, this categorization of humanity and women, you know, submissive and always trying to define them by society clearly so that they're subservient to men continues, and it does. But those are not the cinemas that you look at. You can look at that one side and say, oh, this is such an depressive and oppressive way of portraying women, or you can look at the other side. We make 1,000 films, and you know, even if you're making 500 awful ones, and 500, or at least 50 good ones, where this is being tried to change, it's not just that the cinema is promoting it. Society believes in this. And it's being portrayed in cinema, and it is changing. So for me,
but that's the question. That's a very interesting thing you raise there, because I mean, should Bollywood films, or your films in particular, mirror societies and reflect what their opinions are, or should it try to lead and reform opinion on harmful, negative stereotypes?
I think it should do both. Cinema should do both. It should not just become one that, oh, I'm going to change the society. Some cinema should do that, and some cinema should reflect society and, you know, take on things from real life so that you can identify with them. I just read somewhere a couple of days ago, every art form is a lie, but it is going towards proving some truth. So one lie would be, you know, you're mirroring society. The other one would be where you're trying to tell them to change it. So both kinds of cinemas should happen, not one of them.
Okay, but the most commercially successful ones are going to be the ones that don't upset the apple cart too much. I mean, you have said we have to realise that this is a business at the end of the day, however much you may think it's a creative field. Absolutely, so there's no point making a film that's too challenging and then it just bombs, it doesn't do well.
Yeah, it would. I mean, depending on how much of a challenge you're ready to take. last 5 films of mine have bombed, so I'm...
Have they?
Which will not make me turn around and do the typical film still.
All right. You said last November that you believe in storytelling. You said, I believe no matter what your language, no matter what country your story comes from, and no matter what your ideology is, storytelling and listening should be a familial experience which binds us all together, makes relationships stronger, even in the face of dissent and discussion. Could that refer to some of the intercommunal tensions and divisions that we see in modern-day India?
See, I think that is essential. There will be dissent for everything. And I think, like you would also believe, like we all believe, there has to be a discussion on it. There can't be a radical standoff when there is dissent. I think if you can have a discussion, in our country, we're the biggest democracy. And if you're the biggest democracy, dissent is a part and parcel of that. And as much is discussion. So when you have a story and when you go out, sometimes there's dissent, but I would, as a filmmaker, as a citizen of our country, as a citizen of the world, whenever there's dissent, can we just have a little bit of discussion about it and sort it out instead of taking, standoff positions? So it is possible.
Are you worried about standoff positions, as you put it? Because there is a current of opinion. I've heard it expressed here at Davos from Indian delegates I've talked to about, some people feel that there is a kind of Hindu nationalism that really is not fostering good intercommunal ties.
No, I don't think so. I think, I was just telling people outside, because of social media, whenever a certain thing, when small factions or fractions of things happen, now they seem a little bigger. But the beauty of all this is that within all this trolling and anger and people expressing themselves, they're all also connecting. So I feel this is, we're on the cusp of something amazingly inclusive and integrating in this kind of dissent. When I just see it on social media, I haven't seen it live anywhere, and I would be wrong to comment on it that way. But I think if you have this kind of dissent or whatever, if people claim it, I think just a bit of discussion, especially finally, if it's not going to be inclusive, everybody will suffer. But I think we've not in that stage at all in our country.
You've tended to act most in your films as a non-Muslim Indian, but in recent years, your last few films, My Name is Khan, for instance, in 2010, you're an Indian Muslim man with Asperger's syndrome, takes a challenge to speak to the US president seriously and embarks on a cross-country journey there. Is your Muslim identity becoming more relevant to you now?
No, I've never felt that. I think being an artist, I think these things should be the last on your mind. The only film which required me to play Muslim was My Name is Khan, because it was a film like that. It was talking about the relationship of Islam with the Western world. The others are by chance. There is no. I read this article. Some lady wrote it, and I was really taken aback. I hadn't even realized it myself. Dear Zindagi, I'll tell you this, and Rais, and which is the third one, and I'm a Muslim in it. And suddenly she said, "Oh, is Shah Rukh now trying to put his Muslim identity forward?" No, not at all. There was nothing of that sort. I didn't even realize it.
But there is a controversy attached, because you just mentioned Rais in 2017, and your co-star Mira Khan, who's a Pakistani actor, hasn't even been allowed to come to India to promote the film with you, because there was this tension between India and Pakistan.
See, whenever there is tension between India and Pakistan, whenever there is tension, cricketers don't come to play anymore. So whenever there's tension, I think there was at that point in time.
Yeah.
And as an artist, it's really sad, because I think art, everyone talks about, should cross boundaries, and we should be inclusive, and it's about love and sharing. But when emotions run high, sometimes you don't do things that you would like to. Because I think it's just safer and nicer. And so listen, we are artists. We don't want to get into a part of dissent.
But you get caught up in it, and that was all. That's the point. She still can't go and promote
I think
film.
the easier part of it is to just step back. You're an artist. Just release your film, let people see it, and realize that there's nothing wrong. In the longer run, I think this will get sorted. But whenever there are issues, like we still don't...
Well, now you've got a problem with Padmavat, which is a film, and it's about a 14th century Hindu queen and a Muslim ruler. Fictitious film, but it's caused all sorts of fuss. Went to the Supreme Court in India because people didn't want it shown, and the Supreme Court says no, it can be shown, freedom of speech and so on. Some cinemas say, we're not going to show this film because we're worried about violence. I mean, surely you as, even though you say it's not relevant to your identity, the fact that you're not only an Indian actor icon, you're also a Muslim Indian icon, you should be commenting on this kind of issue.
I can comment on the art part of it. And if I put any identity of me forward, even Indian Muslim identity, it's wrong because as an artist, I should talk as an artist. And as an artist, I think whenever a film comes out, and like we just talked about, if there is dissent, hopefully with discussion it'll end. So I hope it ends with Padmavat also. I think there have been a lot of discussions on that. The other thing I don't want to do via your show is really give any credibility and more conversation to a product which has already been in conversation for 3 months and confuse issues further. I hope, at the end of it all, a filmmaker or an actor or an artist, the only thing they want is their artwork is something that you can watch and enjoy at ease. So I wish for everybody's film, I've had these issues sometimes, without realizing I've stepped on some toes where it seems, no, I may have offended someone, I've changed it. And I have no problems changing it because it's not a compromise, because this freedom of speech, expression bit, yeah, if you make a little changes, if it's not going to, it should not irk you. My art should not irk you and disturb you.
But I asked you in the context of women's rights whether you would use your voice more loudly to try and promote women's rights. And I put it to you that perhaps you ought to do that as a very famous Muslim icon, not just an Indian icon. You said a little while ago, a couple of years ago, if there is a message that I want to give, it would be good if there is no discrimination on the basis of religious, caste, creed, sex or gender. Do you accept that perhaps you should be using your voice?
Well, yes, just as a human being, not as a Muslim icon or a movie star or an Indian, just as a human being. I should be using it louder, I should be using it more often. I need to make myself a little more useful to this world, and inshallah, I will. And I'll try my best in whatever way I can, and I think I do it. But none of us, I think, in the world do enough. That is not an excuse not to do more.
But your father, Mir Khan, was a great admirer of Mahatma Gandhi. He believed in unity, in diversity. He was a devout Muslim. You've named your foundation after him. Does his belief, his philosophy, inspire you now?
The philosophy that inspired me to do Mir Foundation is the philosophy that my sister, my wife, and my daughter have taught me. They've brought me up well, so that I have to request, I have to implore, sometimes beg for a yes. Never force a woman for a yes. I think that philosophy is behind Mir Foundation, where I really want to, in whichever sense, help out a woman who's not been given the choice to say no or be able to assert her choices a little more effectively, get out of this whole definition that society, women's only problem is we're defining them too much. They just want to be defined by themselves, and if I can be part of that movement, part of that help, and I think my 3 women in my house and the women that I work with, they're really helping me find this path, and inshallah I'll be able to take it further.
Shah Rukh Khan, thank you very much indeed for coming on Hard Talk.
Thank you very much, Zainab.
This edition of Hard Talk was presented by me, Zainab Badawi. For details of our complete range of podcasts and our terms of use, go to bbcworldservice.com/podcasts.